It's funny how the smallest things can sit forgotten for decades, tucked away in a drawer, a jar, or an old tin box. And yet, every now and then, one of those tiny pieces of metal can open a doorway straight into the past. Maybe you had a moment like that, when you lift the lid off a dusty container in the attic, expecting screws or loose buttons, and instead you find a handful of old pennies. You roll one between your fingers, and suddenly the world slows down and time feels different. That's where our journey begins today, with a few simple cents that have lived quiet lives, passing through hands long gone, and somehow finding their way to us. The first coin is a 1900 Indian head cent, no mint mark, with the elegant profile of Liberty wearing her feathered headdress. It has what collectors call a large date, though really, all you notice is a steady, even spacing of the digits. This coin has that warm brown color of old copper that feels like it's been waiting patiently in a drawer somewhere. People often imagine finding something like this in an old family farmhouse. I've heard stories of grandparents keeping jars under the sink or tucked behind canned peaches on basement shelves. Someone, decades later, finally takes a look. The 1900 Indian head cent is one of those pieces that shows up in those jars more often than people realize. It's not rare in the sense of being worth a fortune, but it carries a kind of gentle magic. In circulated shape, it might only fetch $1 or $2. A cleaner, better preserved example can reach $10 or $15. And on the rare side, if you ever happen to find one with a minting error, maybe a misaligned die or subtle doubling, it could jump higher into the $50 range or more. But the value is only half the story. Each scratch and wear mark tells you that coins aren't just collectibles, they're survivors. And sometimes the coins that look least perfect have lived the busiest lives. A high-grade example, without scratches, could be worth $10 or $20. But the scratch one, maybe 50 cents to $2. Still, the real worth lies in the imagination it inspires. Next comes the 1902 Indian head cent, another large date, and this one shows noticeable scratches. It may have spent time in a toolbox, scraping against nails or washers. Or perhaps a child once tried to clean it with something too harsh, leaving behind marks that became part of its permanent story. Damage like this often lowers collector value, but coins like this have something else going for them: honesty. Each scratch has a slightly different shade, a different way of catching the copper tones. It reminds you that coins aren't just collectibles. They're witnesses to life. I once heard from a man who found a scratched 1902 Indian head cent in his great-grandfather's old fishing tackle box. It was trapped between lures, rusty hooks, and an old pocket knife. He said he didn't care that it wasn't worth much because it told him more about his great-grandfather's life than money ever could. Then comes a 1905 Indian head cent, and it carries a rusted or uniquely patinated surface. Copper doesn't rust like iron, but over time, especially if left in damp places, old sheds, forgotten basements, boxes left out in the weather, it can develop patches that almost resemble rust. Many collectors actually love this kind of natural patina. A coin like this might have spent part of its life in a metal tin that got wet, or perhaps buried under a porch where the air stayed cool and moist. Someone might have dug it out with a small garden trowel, surprised by the flash of copper in the dirt. Value-wise, a heavily patinated 1905 Indian head cent might run around $1 to $3 in low condition. A nicer one can go for $10 or $20. And truly exceptional pieces, with gorgeous natural toning, occasionally stretch higher. But the real surprise is how many stories a surface like this can tell. Each color shift hints at what the coin went through, and yet the journey doesn't stop with Indian heads. Another coin begins to appear, the 1909 Lincoln wheat cent, no mint mark, large date. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile is comforting and familiar. Yet back in 1909, this design was a milestone. The nation was shifting, modernizing, stepping into a new century with new look for its penny. Imagine finding one of these in an old desk drawer, maybe tucked inside a small manila envelope labeled Old Pennies. People often save the first year of a new coin design without even thinking about it. A 1909 Lincoln without a mint mark is generally affordable, maybe $1 to $5 in circulated condition. If it's sharp with crisp details, it can reach $20 or $30. And the rarest versions, especially those with unusual die varieties, can go higher. This coin carries a warm feeling of familiarity. You can't help but think about how many generations have handled pennies like this. Kids bought gum with them in the 1920s. Soldiers carried them into World War II. Parents handed them to children as spare change for ice cream trucks. It reminds you of simpler times, when even a penny felt like it mattered. Most people have no idea how intriguing the next coin can be. The 1943 steel penny. Born out of wartime necessity, copper was needed for ammunition and military equipment. So the U.S. Mint shifted to steel coated with zinc. Many of these coins rusted over the years. Some people remember their parents or grandparents talking about these steel pennies, calling them silver pennies when they were kids. They were a novelty then, and they remain a conversation starter today. A rusty steel penny isn't worth a lot. Maybe 25 cents to $1. In better shape, still shiny, it can bring $2 to $5. And in the rarest cases, especially if someone ever happened to find a 1943 made in copper instead of steel, the value can soar into the tens of thousands. Of course, that's not what most people find in their attic, but the possibility keeps the imagination alive. As all these coins pass through time, the clean copper 1900, the scratched resilience of 1902, the weather-worn personality of 1905, the warm familiarity of the 1909 Lincoln, and the steely determination of the 1943 wartime penny, you start to realize something. These cents are more than collectibles. They're tiny time capsules. They survived pockets, purses, decades of handling, decades of storage, and the silent passing of time that takes everything except metal and memory. Each one has lived a different life, different appearances, different journeys, but all connected by the hands that held them. And maybe that's why so many people keep jars of old coins in their homes. Not because they know the exact value, not because they expect to find a rare treasure, but because these little discs make us feel connected. To our own younger years, to our families, to moments we didn't even know we were preserving. Old coins do that. They bridge time. They whisper memories. And they remind us that history doesn't always live in museums or books. Sometimes it lives in a penny worn, scratched, rusted, or shining, waiting for someone to notice it again. So whether you're a collector, a casual admirer, or someone who simply loves the soft pull of nostalgia, these coins have a way of bringing us together. They slow us down. They help us remember. And they show us that even the smallest treasures can hold the biggest stories. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you open a forgotten drawer or lift the lid off an old jar, you'll find one of these quiet storytellers waiting for you.